Imagine a child in a classroom. While the other kids are thinking about games, this child, they're mentally calculating if their parents' next paycheck will be enough to cover the rent. At 8 years old, they're the one looking after their younger siblings. By 12, they've become the emotional rock for the adults who are supposed to be supporting them. This, right here, is the psychology of the child who had to grow up too fast. And those effects, they don't just disappear when childhood ends. They echo throughout an entire life, and today, we're going to finally understand why.
What we're about to explore together goes so much deeper than just personality quirks. It actually touches the very wiring of the brain, a brain that was shaped by a childhood that was, well, cut short. So if you've ever felt like an old soul, or like you've basically been an adult your entire life, this might feel a little bit like coming home.
So, where does this story even begin? It all starts in the brain. See, the pressure to grow up early isn't just a feeling, it's a real, biological event. Constant childhood stress, literally, physically, alters the path of our development.
And this right here illustrates a really critical trade-off. Under stress, a child's prefrontal cortex, that's the part for planning and controlling emotions, it develops way too early. Now, that might sound like a good thing, right? Advanced maturity, but it comes at a huge cost. The parts of the brain that are meant for play, for creativity, for just feeling joy, they get left behind, underdeveloped. The brain is forced to choose survival over discovery.
You know what? This process actually has a name. It's called adaptive developmental acceleration. And in a way, it's a brilliant survival strategy. The brain correctly reads the environment and basically says, okay, we don't have time to be a kid right now. We need an adult in charge immediately. It sacrifices the long-term journey of childhood for the immediate need to survive. And that one decision has consequences that can last a lifetime.
This quote from Dr. Bruce Perry, it just captures the feeling perfectly. That sense of being out of sync with other kids, of finding conversations with adults way more comfortable than playing games. Turns out, that wasn't a sign of being mature for your age. It was a sign of a nervous system already locked into survival mode. It was a personality that was forged in the quiet emergency of a childhood that was lost.
So how exactly does this early rewiring of the brain carry over into adult life? Well, these changes don't just fade away. They solidify into a very distinct set of behaviors. And it is so crucial to understand these aren't character flaws. Not at all. They are deeply ingrained survival strategies that just keep running long after the original danger is gone. Psychologists have actually identified 7 really consistent traits in adults who grew up too fast. And as we walk through them, just see if any of this resonates with you. Think of these as the predictable echoes of a childhood that was spent trying to manage very adult problems. The very first trait is this deep, almost compulsive sense of responsibility. If something goes wrong, anything at all, the immediate internal question is, how is this my fault? Now, this isn't healthy accountability. It's something experts call compulsive caretaking. Why? Because as a child, they learned a really dangerous lesson. If I don't hold everything together, it will all fall apart. So now, as an adult, just resting can feel like you're being negligent. Next, we often see what looks like fierce independence, but is really a profound emotional unavailability. Think about it. When asking for help as a child was either unreliable or maybe even dangerous, you learn to stop asking. You learn to become your own parent. So as an adult, that makes true vulnerability feel absolutely terrifying. You might desperately want a deep connection, but your nervous system registers it as a threat, and you might find yourself silently sabotaging your own relationship. Now, it's so important to get this next one right. This kind of people-pleasing, it's not about being nice. It's a survival skill that was perfected in a home where you had to be an expert mood reader just to stay safe. You walk into a room and you instantly scan the emotional temperature. But the cost of this is immense. You become so tuned into what everyone else needs that you completely lose track of your own. You genuinely might not even know what you want anymore. And that leads us directly to chronic anxiety. You see, when your childhood is defined by instability, your brain learns to constantly be on the lookout for the next disaster. It's called anticipatory threat detection. The problem is, even when your life becomes safe and stable, that alarm system in your head, it never really turns off. Every good moment is tinged with a thought, okay, when is this all going to fall apart? It's not pessimism. It's a nervous system that's still living in the past. And what about their own needs? Well, very early on, they learned a tough lesson. My needs are a burden. So they just pushed them down, suppressed them. As adults, even the most basic needs for rest,
for comfort, for help, can feel incredibly selfish. Their entire identity was built on being the one who doesn't need anything from anyone. And this, as you can imagine, is a direct path to burnout, as they ignore their body's signals until a crisis finally forces them to stop.
Now here's a stranger, more haunting trait. Psychologists sometimes call it developmental discontinuity. When you ask these adults about their childhood, they often draw a blank. And it's not because of some single blocked out trauma, but because they were never truly present for it. They were too busy managing it. And this creates a really painful void in adulthood, an inability to connect with that carefree joy that other people seem to remember so easily.
And finally, all of this often culminates in an intense need for control. Let's be really clear here. This isn't about being a control freak or wanting to dominate people. It's an anxious attempt to create safety in a world that once felt terrifyingly unpredictable. To this person, spontaneity feels reckless. Trusting someone feels like a huge gamble. And this constant effort to manage every single outcome is just utterly exhausting. But letting go feels even scarier.
So now we come to what is maybe the most profound and often hidden cost of this whole experience. It's not just about the struggles you face today. It's about the grief for a life that was never actually lived. Therapists have a name for this. They call it ambiguous loss. It's this deep mourning for the person you might have become if you hadn't been forced to be so responsible, so mature, so early. What talents were never discovered? What parts of your true personality never had the space or safety to emerge? It can leave you feeling highly functional on the outside, but deeply unfulfilled on the inside. And that brings us to the question that sits right at the very heart of the healing journey. This isn't meant to be an accusation. Think of it as an invitation to finally meet the person who's been waiting underneath all those layers of survival. And that brings us to the most important part of this whole discussion, the path forward. Because this story, it does not have to end with the trauma. The story can end with healing. And this idea is grounded in a powerful, undeniable fact of neuroscience. The brain can change. It's called neuroplasticity. Those pathways that were carved in childhood are not permanent. What was learned can be unlearned. No, you can't get your childhood back, but you absolutely can release the survival strategies that just don't serve you anymore. Healing isn't random. It follows a pretty structured path. It involves actively giving yourself the care and the validation that you didn't get back then, a process many call reparenting. It also means teaching your body on a deep cellular level that the threat is over and that it's finally safe to relax. And from that place of safety, it is entirely possible to transform these painful experiences into a profound wisdom. And the transformation, it's incredible. That hyper-responsibility doesn't just vanish. It becomes a conscious choice instead of a frantic compulsion. The ability to care for others is still there, but now you learn to include yourself in that circle of care. Forced maturity evolves into earned wisdom. The most crucial takeaway from all of this is this. If you recognized yourself in this story, please know that it wasn't your fault. You were a resourceful child who did whatever was necessary to survive an impossible situation. Those traits, they were not flaws. They were brilliant adaptations. You are not broken. You are a survivor. The environment that required all those adaptations is gone now, and you deserve the chance today to finally find out who you are when you're not just trying to survive. You grew up too fast, yes, but maybe, just maybe, you can finally begin to slow down. That part of you is still in there, waiting to be seen.